You would know this man for this, and this, maybe even this. Steve Jobs was an American inventor, designer, and entrepreneur who had worked for many companies such as Atari, Next Inc., and Pixar. But he is most well known as the founder of Apple. As a child, Jobs was adopted by Clara and Paul Jobs and named Stephen Paul Jobs. He was born on February 24, 1995, and grew up in San Francisco, California. He attended Reed College in Portland, Oregon, but later dropped out. In 1974, Jobs started off his career as a video game designer with Atari, a well-known video game company at the time, but quit after saving enough money for a pilgrimage to India to experience Buddhism. Later in the same year, he reunited with his high school friend Stephen Wozniak, who suggested they go into business together designing computer logic boards. Together, they designed the Apple I, the Apple company's first computer. Jobs was one of the first entrepreneurs to understand that there was a market for personal computers, so with Jobs' encouragement, Wozniak designed the Apple II in 1977, a superior version of its predecessor, complete with a keyboard and molded plastic case. At the same year, Jobs had managed to obtain financing, distribution, and publicity for the company, and Apple Computer was incorporated. The Apple II was an immediate success and increased the company's sales. In 1983, it made the quickest entrance at the time into the Fortune 500 list of America's top companies. However, the next several products were not such a hit. People were starting to favor IBM's more affordable and powerful PCs. At that, IBM had quickly taken over the market. Jobs' apparent failure to correct the problem quickly led him to being phased out and moved to a marginalized position. At that, Jobs left Apple in 1985. After more than a decade of working with companies such as Next Inc. and Pixar, in late 1996, Jobs was finally brought back to an Apple that was on the verge of collapse and was soon requested to lead the company once again in June 1997. Jobs' later innovations during his return to the company revived Apple once again, and with the introduction of the iPhone in 2007, the company was once again finding success. Unfortunately, during this time, Steve Jobs was far from being in his prime. In 2003, Jobs was diagnosed with a rare form of pancreatic cancer. He had managed to recover from surgery, but more complications arose as his health was still in decline, and sadly, he passed away on October 5, 2011, 2 months after he had resigned as CEO. Throughout his career, Jobs was described as many things. He was an ambitious person and worked hard to reach them from a very young age. He once mentioned he wanted to put a ding in the universe, wanting to leave behind a legacy that will be remembered forever. As a child, he showed interest in electronics and spent a huge amount of time working in the garage workshop of his neighbor. It was during the engineering demonstration in the Hewlett-Packard Explorer Club where he saw his first computer. He knew immediately that he wanted to work closely with computers. He continued to attend lectures at the HP plant, and on one occasion even boldly asked William Hewlett himself for parts because he needed them for his class project. Hewlett was extremely impressed by his courage and tenacity, and not only gave him parts for the project, but a summer internship at Hewlett. He was also dedicated and passionate. In one of his speeches, he had shared a few things that had brought him up. Firstly, he highlighted how the dots in life will always connect. It may not make sense today, but every little thing we do makes sense when we look back. For instance, Jobs had mentioned that dropping out of college was one of his best decisions.
It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made.
It was rough.
I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposits to buy food with. And I would walk the 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple.
But during that time, he took up calligraphy, which later assisted him in making the fonts for the Apple I.
If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts.
Secondly, Jobs talked about love and loss. He stated that he was devastated when he was kicked out from Apple. But despite losing a company that he had built from scratch, he still loved what he did.
I still loved what I did. The turn of events at Apple had not changed that one bit. I'm pretty sure none of this would have happened if I hadn't been fired from Apple.
Jobs thought that getting fired was for the better, as he had never thought of Pixar or Next. What happened to him gave him the knowledge of business, and he also said it was one of the most creative periods of his life.
It was awful tasting medicine, but I guess the patient needed it.
Thirdly, Jobs talked about death.
Death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it. And that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention.
From his point of view,
life.
it was the best thing in life, for it not only made way for new things, but also allows us to focus on what is important.
Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become.
In the end, Steve Jobs might not have left behind as big of an impact as he wanted, but he still brought about change and innovation to the world, which influenced the lives of millions of people. Throughout the years, Apple has gained many dedicated followers to its brand, and is now a well-known company all around the world. A huge success considering that the company was started in a tiny garage.